The scent of bleach and stale cigarettes clung to my uniform as I dragged myself through the back entrance of my parents' house. It was Sunday night mandatory family dinner. The same ritual that had become a weekly reminder of my supposed failure. "Look who finally decided to show up," my brother James announced as I walked into the dining room. "The maid of Crystal Lake Hotel, or should I say, the maid of nowhere?" I forced a tired smile, taking my usual seat at the far end of the table. My mother shot me a look of practiced disappointment while arranging the silverware. "Emily, honey, couldn't you at least have changed out of your work clothes? We have guests." By guests she meant my brother's new fiancée Lauren and her parents, the kind of people who believed success was measured by designer labels and country club memberships. They shifted uncomfortably in their seats, trying not to stare at my wrinkled uniform. "Sorry Mom, double shift ran late," I said quietly, helping myself to the mashed potatoes. "We had a bus tour come through." James snorted. "A bus tour? At that dead hotel? What were they touring, cobwebs?" "James," Dad warned half-heartedly, not looking up from his phone. But I could see the corner of his mouth twitch with amusement. "No, really," James continued, warming to his audience. "I drove by there last week. Place looks like something out of a horror movie. What was it, 3 rooms booked? 4. Lauren's father cleared his throat. "Crystal Lake. Isn't that the old resort property out by the state park? Been closed for what, 20 years? 15. I corrected automatically. "And we're not closed. We're operating at reduced capacity while While what?" James interrupted. "While you waste your business degree cleaning toilets. Real smart investment there, sis." The room fell quiet except for the clink of silverware. They were waiting for me to defend myself, to explain why I'd spent my entire inheritance from Grandma, all $180,000, buying a rundown hotel in a forgotten tourist town. Why I'd taken a job as a maid there instead of accepting the corporate position James had lined up for me at his firm. But I just kept eating. "I just don't understand," Mom finally said, her voice tight with familiar disappointment. "You had such potential. A degree from Northwestern. Outstanding recommendations. You could have been running a real hotel by now, not this." "Actually," I said carefully, setting down my fork, "I have some news about the hotel." James's eyes lit up with mock excitement. "Oh, please tell me you're finally selling that money pit. I know a developer who might take it off your hands. For the land value at least." I reached into my bag and pulled out a thick manila envelope, sliding it across the table. "You're right about one thing. I am selling." Dad finally looked up from his phone. "About time you came to your senses. How much are you losing on it?" I kept my face neutral as James snatched up the envelope, probably expecting to see some lowball offer from a desperate buyer. But as he scanned the first page, his smug expression faltered. This has to be a joke," he stammered. "What is it?" Mom asked, leaning forward. James looked at me, then back at the papers. It's a purchase agreement. From Hilton Hotels Corporation." Now I had everyone's attention. "Hilton?" Lauren's father straightened in his chair. "The Hilton? For how much?" Dad demanded. I took a slow sip of water before answering. $50 million. Plus performance incentives over the next 5 years. The silence that followed was deafening. "That's impossible," James finally managed. "Why would Hilton want that worthless property?" "Because," I said quietly, "it's not worthless. Never was. The hotel sits on 200 acres of pristine lakefront property. Direct access to the state park. Protected views. Private beach. Natural springs. And most importantly, it's the only commercially zoned resort property within 100 miles of 3 major cities." I pulled out my phone and pulled up the renderings Hilton's architects had created. They're planning a 300-room luxury resort and conference center. Spa golf course marina. Breaking ground next spring. Mom's hand trembled as she reached for the images. But how did you know? When you bought it?" "I did my research," I said simply. "Spent 6 months analyzing tourism data, development trends, zoning regulations. The previous owners went bankrupt because they were trying to run it as a budget hotel. They never saw its real potential." "So why work as a maid?" Lauren asked, speaking for the first time. "If you knew all this." I smiled. "Because I needed to learn everything about the property. Every creaky floorboard. Every maintenance issue. Every staffing challenge. I needed to understand it from the ground up before I could pitch it to major investors. The bus tours, James said slowly, realization dawning. They weren't tourists. Hotel executives. Development teams. Investors. I nodded. I've given that property tour at least 50 times in the past 2 years. Always in my uniform, always as just the maid. You'd be amazed what people reveal when they think you're invisible. Dad was frantically scrolling through his phone now, probably looking up property records and news about hotel developments in the area. Why didn't you tell us? Would you have believed me? I asked quietly. When I first bought it, you all said I was throwing my life away. Said I was naive. Stupid. Every Sunday dinner became an intervention about my poor life choices. I stood up, gathering my things. The sale closes next month. I'll be staying on as development director for the new resort. And yes, James, I'll be running a real hotel. One that I helped create. As I walked toward the door, I turned back one last time. Oh, and Mom? Sorry about the uniform. But it's the last time you'll have to be embarrassed by it. I quit that job this morning. The look on their faces as I walked out, that was better than any dessert they could have served. The next few weeks were a blur of meetings, paperwork, and increasingly desperate attempts at reconciliation from my family. My phone buzzed constantly with messages I hadn't bothered to answer. Emily, honey, we should discuss your investment strategy. Dad. Just trying to protect you from disappointment. Mom. Hey sis, about that developer friend of mine. James. I archived them all, focusing instead on the transition meetings with Hilton's development team. We were sitting in my small office at Crystal Lake. My real office, not the housekeeping closet I'd used as cover for 2 years, when my brother decided to make an unannounced appearance. Miss Bennett. My assistant Sarah poked her head in. Your brother's here. Says it's urgent. I looked up from the architectural plans spread across my desk. Marcus Chin, Hilton's lead developer, raised an eyebrow. Family situation? Not an urgent one, I replied, then nodded to Sarah. Tell him I'm in meetings all day. But James, being James, pushed past her anyway. He stopped short when he saw the room full of executives in suits. His eyes darted from the plans on the desk to the digital renderings projected on the wall. Emily, he said, trying to sound casual. Didn't realize you had company. Mr. Bennett. Marcus stood, ever professional. We were just reviewing the final placement for the conference center. Your sister's insights about the property's natural features have been invaluable. James forced a smile. Yes, well, she's always been thorough. Listen, Em, can we talk privately for a minute? We're actually in the middle of something critical, I said, not looking up from the plans. Sarah can help you schedule a time later this week. It's about the family foundation, he pressed. Dad's considering some new investment opportunities and dash. No, I cut him off, finally meeting his eyes. Whatever pitch you're here to make, whatever angle you're trying to work, the answer is no. The room had gone uncomfortably quiet. Marcus cleared his throat. Perhaps we should take a break. Not necessary, I said firmly. James was just leaving. My brother's face flushed red. You know what? Fine. Play big shot developer all you want. But don't forget where you came from. Don't forget who helped you get your start. Now I did stand up. I start. You mean the job offers I never asked for? The constant criticism? The weekly reminders of what a disappointment I was. We were trying to help. No, I said quietly. You were trying to control me. There's a difference. James opened his mouth to argue, but I held up my hand. I have a $50 million development project to oversee. I don't have time for whatever scheme you're selling. Sarah will show you out. After he left, Marcus let out a low whistle. Family business is always complicated. I sat back down, straightening the plans he'd brought. Not anymore. Now it's just business. But of course it wasn't that simple. Never is with family. That evening, as I was doing my final walkthrough of the property, a habit I couldn't break after 2 years of actual housekeeping, I found my mother waiting in the lobby. She looked out of place among the faded grandeur of Crystal Lake's entrance, her designer handbag clutched nervously in manicured hands. Emily, please. Just hear me out. I gestured to one of the worn lobby chairs. 5 minutes. She sat carefully as if afraid the vintage furniture might dirty her clothes. Your father and we've been doing some thinking about the foundation's investment portfolio. Mom dash. Just listen, she pleaded. The family foundation has considerable resources. We could help with the development costs, become partners in dash. Stop, I said firmly. I don't need partners. I don't need investors. And I definitely don't need the family foundation trying to claim credit for my success. That's not what this is about. Isn't it? I walked over to the front desk, pulling out the guest ledger I'd maintained meticulously for 2 years. Would you like to see how many times you or Dad visited while I was just a maid here? 0. Not once did you come to see what I was building. Not once did you ask about my plans. We were worried about you, she said softly. Living in that tiny apartment, working these horrible hours. I lived in that tiny apartment so I could put every spare dollar into renovating the core infrastructure. I worked those horrible hours so I could learn every detail about this place. I closed the ledger with a snap. And now that it's paying off, now that Hilton's involved, suddenly you're interested. Mom's eyes filled with tears. We're your family. Family would have believed in me, I replied. Or at least asked why I believed in this place so much. Just then Sarah appeared with a stack of contracts. Sorry to interrupt, but the Hilton legal team needs these reviewed before tomorrow's meeting. Thanks, Sarah. I took the papers, then turned back to my mother. I have work to do. You can see yourself out. As she walked toward the door, she paused. Your grandmother. She would be proud of you. That hit harder than I expected. Grandma had been the only one who supported my decision to buy Crystal Lake. She'd seen something in this old place that matched what I saw, not what it was but what it could be. I know, I said quietly. That's why she left me the money to buy it. She believed in making your own path, not following someone else's. After Mom left, I sat in the lobby for a long time, surrounded by the ghosts of Crystal Lake's past glory. The grand staircase that had hosted countless wedding parties. The massive fireplace where families had gathered on cold nights. The wall of windows overlooking the lake, now clean to a sparkle thanks to my own hands. My phone buzzed, another message from James. Dad's furious. Says you're making a huge mistake not involving the family. Don't burn bridges you might need later. I smiled, thinking of the other envelope sitting in my desk drawer. The one I hadn't shown them yet. Because while Hilton was buying the property for $50 million, they weren't my only option. 3 other major hotel chains had made offers. And tomorrow I would start negotiating terms. Sometimes the best revenge isn't proving people wrong. It's showing them they never had any power over you in the first place. The morning of the final contract signing, I arrived early at Crystal Lake. The sun was just rising over the water, painting the old building in shades of gold and promise. I walked the grounds one last time, not as a maid or even as the owner, but as someone saying goodbye to a trusted friend. Every corner held a memory now. The back stairwell where I'd practiced my investment pitches while mopping floors. The Suite 212 where I'd first overheard Hilton executives discussing expansion plans in the area. The lakefront pavilion where I'd sketched my initial renovation concepts during lunch breaks. Taking one last look? Sarah's voice broke through my thoughts. She handed me a coffee, my usual order from the small cafe in town. Hard to believe it's really happening, I said, accepting the cup. Did the final contracts arrive? She nodded. Just delivered. But there's something else you should know. Your family's here. I froze. All of them. Your parents, your brother, his fiancée, even her parents. They're waiting in the main conference room. Of course they were. Today of all days. There's more, Sarah added hesitantly. Your father's brought Howard Sterling. Now that got my attention. Howard Sterling was one of the most prominent real estate attorneys in Chicago. He'd handled some of the biggest hotel developments in the Midwest. Let me guess, they're trying to block the sale? Sarah shook her head. Actually, they're here with a counteroffer. Sterling's representing the family foundation. They're offering $60 million. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so perfectly predictable. $10 million over Hilton's offer. They really think they can buy their way into this. What do you want me to tell them? I checked my watch. The Hilton executives wouldn't arrive for another hour. Nothing. I'll handle this myself. When I walked into the conference room, the tension was palpable. My father sat at the head of the table, Howard Sterling to his right, various family members arranged around them like pieces on a chessboard. Emily, Dad stood all business. Good of you to join us. In my own hotel? How generous of me. I set my coffee down and remained standing. I assume this isn't a social call. Sterling cleared his throat, opening his briefcase. Miss Bennett, we've prepared a very generous offer. Save it, I cut him off. The property's not for sale. But Hilton James started. Is one of several interested parties, I finished. And none of them involve the family foundation. Dad's face reddened. We're offering $10 million over their price. This isn't about money, I said quietly. It never was. I walked to the windows overlooking the lake. 2 years ago when I bought this place you all thought I was crazy. Called it a waste of my inheritance. Said I was throwing my life away. We were wrong, Mom interjected. We see that now. No, I turned back to face them. You see dollar signs now. There's a difference. I pulled out my phone and pulled up an email, reading aloud. Dear Ms. Bennett, we are impressed not just by the property's potential, but by your comprehensive understanding of its operations and your clear vision for its future. Your hands-on approach and detailed knowledge of every aspect of the hotel's functioning sets you apart from typical developers. What's that? James demanded. An email from Marriott International, I said calmly. One of 4 major hotel chains currently bidding on Crystal Lake. Hilton's offer was just the first one I showed you. The room went silent. You see, I continued, while you were all laughing at the maid cleaning rooms, I was building relationships. Learning the industry from the ground up. Creating a bidding war between the biggest names in hospitality. Sterling looked impressed despite himself. How many offers do you have? 4 firm offers ranging from $50 to $75 million. Plus 2 investment groups interested in partnerships. I smiled. But that's not even the best part. I walked to the door and nodded to Sarah, who wheeled in a presentation board covered with a cloth. The best part, I said, pulling off the cloth to reveal architectural renderings, is that every single offer includes keeping me on as executive director of development. Not just for this project, but for future expansions across their portfolios. The renderings showed not just Crystal Lake's transformation, but concepts for 3 other resort properties in different states. My name was listed prominently on each one. You've been planning this all along? Mom whispered. I've been working for this all along, I corrected. Every long shift. Every missed family dinner. Every moment you thought I was just scrubbing toilets, I was building a future. My future. Not the family's. Dad stood up, his voice tight. Emily, be reasonable. The foundation has no place here, I finished. I think we're done. As if on cue, Sarah appeared at the door. Ms. Bennett? The Marriott executives have arrived early. They're asking to speak with you. I gathered my things calmly. If you'll excuse me, I have a real meeting to attend. Sarah will show you out. Wait, James called as I reached the door. At least tell us which offer you're taking. I paused, then turned back with a small smile. That's the beauty of success, James. I don't have to tell you anything. 3 months later, I stood on the balcony of my new office in the Marriott corporate headquarters, overlooking the Chicago skyline. Crystal Lake was already under renovation, its transformation from forgotten resort to luxury destination well underway. My name was on the development team for 2 other major projects, and industry magazines had started calling me hospitality's rising star. My phone buzzed, another message from Mom. Saw the article in Forbes. We miss you at Sunday dinners. I archived it without responding. Some bridges aren't meant to be rebuilt. Sarah knocked on my door. Your 2 o'clock is here. The development team for the Colorado Springs project. I straightened my jacket, designer now but still practical. Still ready to roll up my sleeves and get my hands dirty if needed. Because that's what real success taught me. It's not about looking the part. It's about doing the work even when no one's watching. Especially when no one's watching. Send them in, I said, taking my seat at the head of the conference table. And Sarah, make sure they have the updated projections. The ones that show why starting from the bottom is sometimes the best way to reach the top. Because in the end, success isn't about proving others wrong. It's about proving yourself right. And sometimes the best view comes after the longest climb.